Start. Let me know if screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visual.
Okay. Today, today we will discuss about the repository and why repository is good for us, not us in the programming. And let me share my code first, then I'll how we need to work it. So yes, we have repositories, and I'm going to do some basic things into the repository so you can understand how we need to work with the repository pattern. So basic funda is why we need to repositories, because the repository is the logic behind in which, like, suppose we have an application in which UI part and services and repositories data access. If we remove the repository pattern, then we don't need to change the business logic. Let me explain in the paints, then we'll discuss it. Suppose we have this design pattern. It's called onion architecture, in which we have a UI part, then we have a business logic, then we have a services. So basically UI, you can say service or VPL, here the repo and the TL data access layer. So why these things in this scenario, why we need to uh, do stuff with the repositories? So in this scenario, we need a repository pattern, because suppose if you need your application connected with the SQL server, now you need to connect with the MongoDB or connect with the MySQL or a different database. Don't need to change the business logic, because all thing is encoded into the business logic, and we need to only change the repository, like data access we need to change. Repository will be still there, but yeah, that will be a part of how you developed. But the thing is, we need to only change the data access layer and it will connect with your project. There is no problem in the project. So that's why we need repositories. And yeah, there are different kind of the pattern, but right now we are going to use the repository pattern, the basic things, how it's working. Now going in the APIs, I'm going to create here. First thing is the base repositories. Base repositories, because in all the repositories which we are going to use for the different purpose, in which we will inherit the base repositories interface and will work and will save few lines of code. That is very useful actually. So base repository. Okay, now it should be an interface. Make it public, because we are going to use in outside of this, so that's why we need to use this. And here we need to use the T. T means the type, where T and the class. Okay. Lots of people inside. That's awesome. Okay. If you guys do not understand or want to ask anything, please let me know here. Okay. So here I'm going to create a few methods which is we are using in every repositories. So I'm going to use the task. Why? Because I'm going to use here asynchronous methods. So yes, task T get async, but I need to rename this get by ID. That is more useful actually. Like more useful, not more readable. So here async why we are using, because suppose if you doing like this, but you are still using the task like asynchronous methods, so it is not readable. Why? If someone going to use this method, so actually they don't understand this is the asynchronous. Yes, there are intelligence that will tell you we need to use the await here, but it's not readable, so we need to use async. Okay, and more methods here will be there. Now it's a task. In the task I enumerable and T, because which type of entity you want to get, that's why we are providing the T, the type, because we don't know which kind of entity will be assigned into it. So if normally what we are doing, suppose we are creating a employee repository in which we are not using the base repository, what we need to do, every time we need to create the get id, get uh, get list, which is common method we are using into all repositories. That's why we are creating a common base repository that will be inherit into that and will implement that. Okay, now it should be a get all async and don't need to pass id because it will be all. And third is add async. Fourth is update async. And here don't need to use T because we are updating something. So it should not return anything actually, but yeah, you can return and you can use here. But actually the standard is in while updating, we are not returning anything. So that's why using the task, because if we are using the asynchronous programming, so into that we need to use the task. And yeah, this is wrong. We need to pass here the T and TT. And here we need to pass T in TT as well. In, don't mind if spelling mistake. Okay. And now the last one is delete, in which also, because in the delete we are not passing an ID. We can do it here ID, but actually we are in the delete functionality. So let me clear this. Someone know, like here we are passing the ID to get whatever the entity, because when we use that we will pass into this the type of entity in which you want to get. But here we are using y entity because we are going to remove everything. So suppose in the entity framework, if you want to remove any of element in the collection, you need to pass as a single model inside that which type of collection you want to delete. So that's why here the t entity in the delete and update and add. In the get, you don't need to pass any the entity. Okay. Now here, let's implement this. How we can implement this and how it will work actually. So we need to use the classes here. So here the public class base, actually need to copy here instead of writing D I base repositories. The I repositories, the T, because here we are doing, so we need to do it same actually. So why it's saying error? Because we need to implement all the methods here. Okay, so let's do it. And first click on this and you will see the intelligence, and just click on that. So all method will be created. You need to implement that all. But first we need to use the constructor here. Why the constructor we need to use? Because if you want to go, if you going to perform something in your classes, you need to initialize the dependencies into that. What kind of dependencies? If you going to connect with the data access, so you need to inject into that. That's why we need a constructor here, because when your application going to your class is going to invoke, that time at the runtime dependency invoked, when the request something and it's come to the pipeline and all, there are fundamentals. But the thing is constructor, because at the first time it initialize into your dependencies whatever it is, and then you can use that. So that's why we are using here. The shortcut is ctor double tab, and you will create a constructor here, and you need to use the private read only, and whatever we have the context file. So we need to go into the project and let's see the context here, and you can exchange db context. So simply you just copy this and come here and just paste here, and then add the db context. Need to add the reference here. Yeah, that will not going to provide the circular dependency. Sometime if you feel circular dependencies, so circular dependencies actually why it happening, somewhere not happening in this. If you see that kind of error, so you have to resolve that circular dependencies when, suppose you have a multiple projects, and if you added this repositories into the exchange, and also you are using exchange into the repositories, so that kind of circular dependencies, and that will cause through the error. That's why we need to avoid that things. So be careful for that. Okay, so one more thing I need to do here, we need to use the db access, sorry, db set. db set basically your database set which is connected with your uh, tables, so in which we need to pass the model, and then we will perform some operation over there. So we need to use the db and set into pass the t, and then db set. That's it. Okay, let me add the reference MVC core, and yeah. So let me clear first these things why we are using the private read only and all. So here private, why? Because we are going to perform operations directly with the database, and if I'll make it public, anyone can access these properties and they can manipulate our data. That's why we are doing the private. Why the read only? Because at the compile time we are not assigning any kind of dependency injections. That's why we are doing the read only while the running. Because if you doing the so let me clear two things from the C sharp. Whenever you are going to give any interviews, they can ask what is the constant and read only. So constant, in which we are assigning at the compile time when the compiler knows what it is, what the value which is assigned into that constant variable, because that is not going to change. Okay, and we cannot also change that value at the runtime. So a compiler knows that, but in the read only, compiler don't know, and at the runtime we are assigning whatever the injections happening or something, whatever you are doing there. But the read-only things at the runtime we are assigning into the property read-only properties. So that's why we are using the read-only, because we are not using at the compile time when the application going to invoke, like for this class, when we are going want to when we are requesting for this class to get the instance, that time this injection will be happen and the assignment will be happen. So that's why we are doing the read only here. And yeah, let's go with the next. And here we are going to assign our DB context. So this context will be here, and yeah, and yes, I will also going to demonstrate, not demonstrate, explain the things. I'm creating here the same variables, right? So you can see here DB context is null here. Yeah, in the latest C#, it's a new thing. Whatever we are creating the models, we need to make as a nullable or not. If we are not going to make as a nullable, that will tell you the warning that property can be null. So yeah, don't be afraid of this. And the second thing is here we are doing the same variable, so the compiler doesn't know like which variable you are initializing into which. So that's why this is the local variable, and right now the local variable is the more powerful right now from the global variables, because it is the scope of this variable. So that's why we need to make here the this keyword. I know, I think everybody aware about the this keyword. The current class object contains this keyword, so that's why we can use the this keyword to access anything in the current class. And yeah, okay. So you can do it like this, or you can do it something like this. You can put here the underscore, and you can change the variable name here. Okay. So yeah, that will work also. Most people are doing like this. Now going to the next part. Next part is, because DB set is not a injection, we are not doing the injection over the DB set, because it's kind of uh, who can say, I'm not getting that word, but in the DB set that is not going to use as an injection. So that's why we are not injecting into the constructor as a DB set, but we are going to create get the all the data set which is inside our context file. So what we are going to do here, just copy this and context, like we have a DB context, this one, DB context dot set, and into pass the T before the type, and then that's it. This is the basic things we need to do in the constructor. And the next part is in the add async, we need to implement our functionality here. So what we need to do here, do simple things, return, and here we are using the asynchronous programming, so we need to use the await keyword here. I'll also tell you why we need to use the await keyword here. And so the DB set uh, set dot find async, a method that is find async, and get that, and inside we need to pass whatever the ID coming through. But this is the basically add functionality, so I need to add here, not find. I will I so that mm, where it is. Yeah, first I will go with this and async, and here pass the ID. Okay, so here we need to use the async. If we are using the asynchronous programming, we need to use the async, otherwise it will not going to work. Or why we need to use the await? Because when we use the await, the thread will be suspended, and whatever the result come through that, it will return. So that's why we are using the await. If we'll remove the await, we don't know the when the result will come. Okay, and you can do also one thing. You can remove this and just put here the result. Okay, so you can do this. But suppose if there is no result in that function, to like suppose a function that is not returning any result in this scenario, so we just need to use the await, but we can't use the result. Why? Because that method is not returning anything, no result there. So that's why we can't use the result. Okay, I hope everything is clear. And this is the one thing. And second thing is, find on its ID basically. DB system. Oh, sorry, I forgot that. To list async, and it will return all the result which is respective of T, the entity. Okay. Now what it's saying where value task and if the entity given the primary can are tracked by. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now the second thing is how we can use the add functionality here. So add where? Yes. Here the add here await, because we are doing the synchronous, and my habit, my if you want to rename a variable into all in that file to rename and change immediate effect, select this variable and use the control RR and just change it underscore, because my habit is doing uh, using underscore, that's why I'm changing here. Variable set dot add async and the entity. Okay, so we added this, and second thing we need to save this. Await context db context dot save async and then return entity. Okay, so how we can add here, add functionality, and more thing is the delete and the update. So first we have delete. Okay, so we need to use here db set dot remove, and into we need to pass the entity, which entity we want to remove. Okay, and we need to use save functionality db context dot save async. Okay, why it's saying the error? Because we are not using what, we are not returning the entity, because the task contains the type T and we need to return this. Okay, so in the delete functionality we need to return, but in the delete no return should be so let me go in the method, the delete, yeah, that should be removed. And yeah, so okay, now get all async, find and update. The last one is update db set dot update pass entity and then use the wait context dot save changes sync That is the basically common repositories which we are going to use in other repositories and in the very easy manner. So that's why we need to use this always. Okay, let's do it. The base repositories. Okay, let's create first repositories at interface. Let me check first the model. First, the model is items. Is what? Okay. So here I have created a model. Let me explain what I did. I have created the abstract class, and because abstract class is not cannot instantiate it, but yeah, we can create a constructor inside this. In the C# abstract class, I think cannot create the instance of that, but it can have a constructor, and it will instantiate by the child. So abstraction, where we are using the abstraction uh, in the inheritance. When you are creating a class, an abstract class, and if you are going to use as a like that abstract class going to inherit by another class, in that scenario you can perform the abstraction, otherwise there is no use of the abstraction. So yeah, that's why I have created a abstract class here, and by default few properties I have created here. Why? Because second, yeah, because in the every models that needs a key first thing, and some other properties that that is very useful while doing something in that application. For example, here we have a created by I make it virtual because we can override the properties. Okay, that's why I have make here virtual, and the created by, the modified by, and created at, updated at, and is active. These properties are by default in all models. That's why I have created a single model and inherited in other models that will avoid to uh, create these properties again and again. Okay. Mm, and now what I'm going to show. Yes. One more thing is, if you are not creating a key, I suppose it cannot created into our database, because it by default there is two things. If you have created a database first approach, while creating the EDMX file, there are an option like you want to include as a primary key classes tables or not. So there is a checkbox. So that's why we need to use key into every models. That is very good approach, and yeah, I'm going to create a repositories, then I will create endpoints and they'll perform a few operations over there. And let's see how these base repositories work. Now going to create a repository. First the class, and here I'm going to create which repository? Item repository. Item repository, or we can say it's service. Yes. Instead of doing repository, no worry, that's fine. That will be a public, because I rename as a I, so it should be here interface. And in this, we need to do some add functionality and other functionality, like suppose delete, insert, whatever we want to perform into this. So that will be a good. Okay, so I'm going to create my item repositories and here the task and like what's here the task create item update item and here we need to pass what kind of repositories we are going to use actual. So suppose I'm going to create here item. So I need to do something like this. TTO models. Yeah, I need to do some stuff here as another TTO model, which is a view part of the model. So I'll make the same model, but the items is coming right. So I'll going to create both things inside that model first. DTO. Why we need to DTO? Because this is the view model and we don't want to show all the properties from the tables. So that's why I created the view model and in which whatever you want to show, you can put the properties name and you can create a map for the every properties. Okay, so I'll do the mapping as well. But right now we are creating and I use this. And here we need to pass which class I have created right here. Item D. STTO. And that's item. Sure. Item size created item size TTO. Yeah, I can make a model and I need to add as a reference TTO. What it's saying could not be found. It's saying this. Something. The name is space item TTO could not be found or missing the directory. Can believe. No. Let's make it. Sometime intelligence wrong. And now I've created this and I can also implement this into but I'll prefer to create folder services and like not services something like this repositories and second I repositories and inside I need to add the I repositories I already added. I just cut this and I'll paste into this so yes, make sure in the namespace just remove the extra folder names Otherwise, sometime if you are going to move any files, that will make a bit trouble for this. Okay, so I'll created this and also going to create item repository. Uh, Now here, how we can use this. So first we need to implement the interface, right? And second thing is how we can use this, because this is the also one second, make the folder. Oh, this repository. I'll cut this. I'll paste here. No, and paste repositories. So I'll make another file here into this class paste repositories. That will throw an error because same class are available. Sorry, same class is available. So here I'm going to cut this and I'm going to paste here because we are separating all the things that will be make your code clean. Okay, now this. Okay, right now we are how we are going to implement into the item repositories to our base repositories. So I suppose we need to use first, because two classes we cannot use at the same time. And if you are going to implement that interface, use interface, so you need to implement all the, because interface, whatever the method, concrete method contains in an interface, you need to implement that. So in this scenario, we are not going to implement interface, we are going to implement the classes here. So what I'll make here, I'll make here the base repositories, and then comma item repositories. Make sense? And I'll implement all the item repositories here, whatever it contains. But this is a generic type, so I think it's required. T. Oh, no. Something is wrong. If I'm going to implement a base repositories, then we are going to call this base repositories contains the things we need. Like for which class we are going to use here. We are going to use the item size repositories, right? For the item size. So yes, I said if make this changes and size it is item size. Let's say into, we need to pass this, should work. And let's say item size repositories, base context. So let me tell you, sorry guys, my health is not okay. Item size repositories, here we are creating the constructor, and second thing is the base repositories. Why we are passing as a T? If you go inside this, we are passing here the T. T means the type. and on which type we are going to perform item size model. Okay, so that's why we are creating here, we are passing as a type of item size. And second thing, item size repositories, because it contains your concrete method you are going to create and update, right? So in this scenario, we are doing like this. And for constructor, why we are doing? Because the item size repositories, we are injecting here a DB context, and it's calling a base class and passing the DB context. So let me tell you how it works. So the base class basically, if you talk about the base class inside this is the base class. Why this is the base class? Because this is the interface, and we cannot make more than one inheritance as a class. Okay, it doesn't support in the C sharp, in the object oriented actually. So the base class is base repositories, and inside the base class constructor we are passing the DB context. And if you go inside this, you can see the constructor we are passing, we are taking as a DB context which is connected with your database, right? So that is the basically scenario why we are doing like this. Okay, so I hope it works for you guys. And yeah, let's do another stuff. We'll do some another things. What we need to do, we need to uh, pass here the repository. How we can do, talk about the, no, we need to take here some few stuff. Suppose if I'll going to create repositories classes, and it's to pass the repositories, and then in this scenario, first we need to register the service inside the program.cs, and where we are registering, yes, we are registering the controller here. After this and before this we can do the, because it's a service, and let's do like this, dot add. There are three types of dependency injection in .NET Core: add singleton, scoped, singleton, scoped, and transient. In the singleton, when we are creating uh, when we are creating like a single object, and that is not going to create an object again and again, more than one time we can't create in the case of singleton. And when it happens, when your application loaded, at that time the singleton object created, suppose we have a logger functionality that will log your all the details, either it's exception or whatever it is comes to that logger. So we are doing the add singleton and using iLogger interface. Why? Because everybody needs to that iLogger at a single time, because there is no as per the user instance, because the iLogger functionality can access anyone and log their problem into that log file that will be common. Okay, so that time we are uh, creating add singleton instance and using our services inside that. But if you are going to use the scoped and transient, so scoped work into a single scoped, and not a single scope, basically it work into the single into the scoped. And whenever a requester request for an instance, it create each time a new instance, but you cannot use that more than once, because it contains in a scoped. And like suppose a local variable and global variable, you can think like that. And in about the transient, when we are going to use the transient, each time it's create a new object, but there is no restriction of the scope. You can use a multiple time. So that's why we are using the scope and transient and singleton, three types of dependency injection, and that can be achieved by three types of properties, method, and constructor. That this question can be asked by the interviewer. Okay, so I'm going to use here scoped, add scope into, I'm going to pass our services item. Copy here and pass as a dictionary, comma, the class. Add a reference, because first time we are going to use this, we need to add a reference. In this scenario, what is happening? It's a repository inside the repository. That's the wrong thing, because if we are going to use this, so everywhere when we are using this namespace, all the repositories comes into that. But if we are have a different folders, and you are making that as a in different folders namespace, so that will be not easy to use that. So that's why we need to make it repositories, something like this. So it will be easier to access. Why? Because you can see. So that will be a separate everything. So we don't need to do this as much as possible. Item size property could not be found. Are you missing directory? Yes, of course. How many times you want to do this? I need to save it. I need to build it. The error will be came here. Okay. Yes. Return. No return. Biggest task. We just need to sync. That's it. Hmm. Very bad. Okay. Now here we are using this. Go to implementation part. Now we are using this kind of stuff. So go to definition, and we need to use the add async methods. Okay, for which base repositories. So let's see. Oh, wait, add async and pass model. That's it? No, that's not it. Actually, we need to use the AutoMapper. Why we need to use the AutoMapper? Because this is the things where the entity, actually we are passing as a item size DTO, but here this is the item size, here the item DTO. This is going to be conflict. Okay, so that's why we need to use the AutoMapper, and then we don't need to pass as a model right now. If you want to see the things new of item size, and you can pass all the details here, that will be okay, no problem. But the models we are defining here are different, and here the different. That's why we need to use the AutoMapper. That will make your programming easy. So I'll going to create a mapper here, and the folder will be here. I'll do it as a separate mapping for each models, but right now I'm going to create a single mapping and into will do all things. Okay, so here the mapping inside. I'm creating a mapping profile. If any question, please ask. Don't hesitate. If I can explain, I'll explain. Otherwise, I will read that and then explain. So we need to use the AutoMapper functionality here. How we can use that? We need to install the plugin from the NuGet package, and yeah, we need to search here AutoMapper. You can see. Uh, Come on. Oh, sorry, I'm in update. You can see this is the AutoMapper that we need to use here, and yeah, let's install this. It's a 12 version. Uh, I am sorry. Let's see. Nothing. Let me clean the code and then I'll start. That's it. Sometime if you are facing some DLL issues, you can clean the code and then you can do again build. Autofac. It's called autofac. No, it's not autofac. Auto. It's not AutoMapper. Actually, one I need to search. I just forget the class name. The auto profile. Profile. I think yes. This is like profile. And then we are going to pass an object with a, different models, and that will make like we need to actually assign the each property one by one, and then we need to create the map functionality into this. So what I'll going to do here, the mapper dot slice or something else. 1 second, I just forget. I need to figure it out. AutoMapper. It's skip from my mind. Get out. This extension be right. Configuration level, I know. This is also no. Okay. The user profile and the create the map. Yeah, that is the actually things we need to do it like this, and all will be good. So you can create a multiple profiles like user profile, and like suppose you create map for different members. You just need to pass the destination and all, and that's it. And do this like that's basically a simple things. And also user profile, that is separate mapping. Actually, I want to look in a single, leave it AutoMapper. I need to go in. Yes, that's it. I want to see to the websites. It is fine. Create the configuration. Create mapping profile. The create map. Yes. I need to use the item size and here the B model item size DTO does not exist create map. I don't understand that thing. 1 second. I have a project. I already used that. I'll check that. I used in different way. Mapping profiles. The profiles, mapping profiles. Yeah, I forgot this. Because, yeah, one thing is without a method, we cannot call any method inside that. So that's why this is the error. Class is nothing actually. Everything is a form of object. So if you want to call any methods, that could be called in method actually. So I need to create here the constructor, and when your mapping profile will load, all the mapping will be set. So here CTOR, that's what I was looking. Now create map you can see here, and if you can use the reverse, yeah, you can see reverse, that means it will map with this model and this model will map this model. So don't need to uh, do a do map here. Like suppose if you want to map item size into item size DTO and item size DTO into item size, then you need to create two maps. But if you use reverse map, that will be a both side mapping. Okay, so now what I need to do here, I need to create those members mapping which is required for me. So here for member or not members, for members m for member, and in this we need to pass the destination, need to use the lambda expression, and dest dot, which one we need to use, item, or what I need to do here, go to peak definition and item category and size. So I'll make here item category, okay, comma, option dot opt dot map from, inside pass the source src to src dot item category. That's simple thing. Now do it. Control D, you will get another line of the code, and into you can pass your different kind of property, peak definition and size. You make the size and size. That's it. The property names could be different. That's not a mandatory with same property name. So which property you want to make destination and from which property you want to assign, that is depends on you. Okay. So yeah, I'll created here the map, and now I think I'm not going to do stuff here, but yeah, I'm not going to create a transaction, but yeah, I'm going to choose how we can do the mapping here, like the mapper functionality. So I'll create here the private read-only IMapper and underscore mapper. So I'll add the AutoMapper extension, please add, and now just make here a comma and just make here underscore mapper equals to mapper. That's it. Now what we need to do here, the map in the destination, in the angular bracket, not need to pass the destination, which destination, item size, and pass the DTO model. Yeah, that's simple. So this is the way how we can create and how we can use the repositories and optimize the repositories functionality. Next, in the next session, I'll discuss more other things and make one or more insertion into database. And yeah, that's it from my side. If any question, you can ask.